if you're going to enter a match that could be worth £50,000, make sure you draw an end peg and make sure you've got the wind blowing into it. And make sure you've got a load of space as well, because that is exactly what I did on the latest Maven Match Disqualifier at Hayfield Lakes. I drew peg 71 on Island Lake. No matter what, I was going to have a great day's fishing. Could I get over the line? We're going to go through the match in massive detail. We've filmed the match, we're going to look at the rigs, we're going to look at the bait, we're going to look at the approach. Let's get on with it. Now, if there's one thing that I know you Edge subscribers love, it is detail. You want to find out all the little intricacies in those decisions and those rigs and the timings of your matches, and you want to improve as anglers. So during this live match, we're going to go through all of those details. We're going to try and give you everything. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, Lee isn't with us for this live match because he's away sunning himself in Cape Verde with his missus and kids. He's having a wonderful time. However, I am on an absolute flyer of a peg at Hayfield Lakes, one of my favourite fisheries in the Maven Match Disqualifier. Peg 71. Now, peg 71, it's an end peg, gentle ripple blowing into it, loads of space. When I got to my peg, it was like the peg dreams are made of. In one of these qualifiers, these are the pegs that you need to draw. So immediately, I need to start thinking about tactics, how I'm going to approach the peg, what I'm going to do to try and ultimately qualify for a match that could be worth £50,000. It could be worth a little bit more. So you need to go with quite a positive mindset. Now, a few anglers were talking about long pole on the deck, firing pellets in. I think that's a great tactic. Is it positive enough for me? Probably not when I've drew an area that holds fish anyway. It's margin time, folks, and to celebrate that fact, we've got the Rolls Royce of margin poles to give away. We've got the Daiwa Tournament Professional margin pole. There's a competition running over on cuttingedgecomps.co.uk at the moment where you've got a chance to win this thing of beauty. Now, this is 9 metres in length. It has got to be the best, if not one of the best margin poles on the market. It is supreme quality, let me tell you. You can target those massive fish in the margins on your local commercial fishery with no worry whatsoever. There's a 20 elastic rating on this pole, so it's super strong. Also, the sections of this pole fit all UK-made Daiwa poles, which means you've either got spare sections in case of a breakage, or you've just got a workhorse for those situations where you need to target some massive fish. So, how can you go about winning this brand new Daiwa tournament margin pole? Just head over to cuttingedgecomps.co.uk. There's a giveaway running at the moment. Have as many goes as you like. I hope it's your lucky day. I've got a short pole line straight in front of me if I want it. Classic area of any commercial fishery swim, that 5-6 metre line where you can either pop bait or throw bait. Great throughout most of the session, especially the latter part of the session. Had a lovely long margin to my right hand side that obviously that needed some attention during the day. Hopefully later on that's where I was going to catch most of my fish. And also big sweeping margin going around the corner that potentially I could chuck a feeder to. So I've got 3 areas in my mind that I was going to fish. I also set up a mugging rig. I don't think you can go to any lake where there's some big carp involved and you can't have a mugging rig set up. You've got to have a mugging rig set up just in case a few fish start showing, a few fish start cruising around. Even if you spot one fish during the day and you manage to mug that fish, it can make a huge difference. So I think you've always got to have it there as a bit of a opportunistic sort of approach. Now, for me, I always like to start on these big matches when I feel I've got a bit of space and a bit of room. I always like to start fishing short just to see what the day's going to be like, get a feel for the day. So I started fishing on this match 6 metres out. The bottom seemed to just sort of like gradually flatten out a little bit. It seemed to be a tiny little bit flatter at 6 metres. It was still going away, don't get me wrong. Island Lake at Hayfield is a deep lake, but it just felt that by fishing slightly to my right. I'd already angled my box to my right, because obviously that's the way I was going to be fishing anyway. But by fishing slightly to my right, 6 metres rather than 5 metres, I was in a slightly bit of flatter area of the swim. So let's talk about the rig for that area of the swim. First of all, we've got our elastic. Now, because it's quite deep, we need to make sure that we've not got a really fine, soft elastic. I don't want to be stripping loads out of the puller kit when I net my fish. Deep water means stronger elastic for me. So we've got 17 hollow there. We've got 020 main line. Remember, we're talking about big carp. We've got a 4x16's Malman Rube. Now, this is a rube that Gaz Malman, he's put some thicker bristles in for me. So these are thicker bristles. I've had these maybe 2.5 years now. They work really well for 6mm, 8mm pellets, big bits of meat, those sort of baits, big baits. I always think if you've got a big bait, i.e. a big anchor, you're going to need a big ship, and this is, that big buoyant bristle is a big ship. So I can dot that down, still see everything and read everything. So titanium wire stem, go down here, we've got our bulk, probably about 18 inch, 2 foot away from the hook, and we've got 2 droppers, and I quite like an 8-inch hook length when I'm fishing for big carp. So we've got an 8-inch hook length there. That is 018. We've got a size 16 hook with a bait band on a hair, and 6mm, fishery 6mm hard pellets on this line. That's what I intend to fish, and that's why I do catch most of my fish on, to be fair. So I like to start by just sneaking a few pellets in with a pole pot, 8 or 10 at a time, sitting there nice and patiently and seeing what happens. And then as the day goes on, we'll probably have to start throwing a little bit of bait there, being a bit more active, trying to regulate the feed, trying to be clever with how we put the bait in. So by that I mean, I don't want to feed when my rig's in the water if I can. When I'm playing a fish, that's the time for feeding for me, ideally, or when my rig's out of the water, that's the time for feeding. Theory being, if I was to feed when my rig's in the water, the trouble that we'll have is that bait is obviously falling through the water. There's a rattle on the water surface which gets the fish excited. The bait falls through the water. If the fish is intercepting that bait and my hook bait is sitting on the bottom, the fish is going to intercept that bait at half depth or 3/4 depth or wherever it intercepts that bait. My hook bait's on the bottom. It's of no use. So what I want to do is make sure that when I feed, that loose feed has made it to the bottom before I put my rig in. Otherwise, the only indication, in theory, that I can get on my float is a line bite from that fish intercepting the bait. I'm going to foul hook the fish or miss the bite. I'm going to spook the fish. I get out of my rhythm. I've wasted a big part of my day by doing that. So feeding while your rig is out of the water, for me, that's how I like to do it. Difficult to get a read on the day doing that, but that obviously comes down to experience, knowing how much to feed, feeling you well into the session. Next part of the day, because we're moving on, we had a good spell short, but we need to start catching more and more fish. This is a good peg, we need to make the most of it. Feeder. Now, inline feeders only at Hayfield, free running feeders. I had a quick chat to Andy Kinder actually before the start, and he was telling me about the size of feeders to use, because I would love to chuck a big hybrid or Jura Banjo. The water's warm, we're catching big fish. For me, big feeders. But he did say to me, he said, look, I won't go big, I'd go small on the feeder size. So we went sort of like a happy medium feeder size. This is actually a little Cresta feeder. It's 25 grams, see there, free running. We had a 4-inch hook length on, of 018, size 12 hook, and hook bait on our feeder was one of these. You know the score. I love these hook baits. I just use them everywhere. I was told by a couple that yellow isn't the greatest of baits at Hayfield, but I caught plenty of fish on them during this particular match, so I just take them everywhere. Never lets me down. If I was giving you one bit of advice with hook baits, there's so many different colours and varieties on the market. Get one that you've got confidence in and just use that. You know, you're attracting fish to your little parcel of micros around your feeder. I think as long as it's not necessarily poison that you're putting on your hair, they're going to pick it up. So get a hook bait that you're confident in, you've caught plenty of fish on, and just use that. I see people with so many different colours and flavours of mini hook baits and wowsers and wafters and mini boilies and all sorts. So confusing. There's obviously a time and a place, but for a venue that you're not really certain about and you've not really sort of micro-analysed the tactics for, stick to your tried and trusted hook baits. They're not going to let you down. As always, in a lot of my recent matches, been using the Free Spirit feeder light. This is the CTX feeder light. Beautiful rod, ideal for chucks up to sort of like 40 metres, I guess, with a little method feeder. Even though I'm catching big fish or potentially targeting big fish, nice soft rod is the way to go. On the reel, we've got 023, that's Sufix Advance. The reel is an Okuma Seamar. As we can see, the reel has seen a bit of action recently. It probably needs a good clean, but we've had some rain and awful weather conditions. I've literally just been packing it away at the end of the sessions, and if it's covered in mud and ground bait, it's covered in mud and ground bait. It's been working great for me. That was the feeder setup, and we had a great response. Some mixed sizes of fish, not all big fish, but we had some decent fish, sort of like up to 8 pound, but there were some smaller fish as well. There's a few stockies been put into Hayfield. The stocking of Hayfield is really good now in Island Lake, and we were getting regular bites. We'd cast out 3 minutes, 4 minutes, tip would go round, we've got a fish on the end. Looking around, there wasn't loads and loads of fish being caught on my lake, especially down my end of the lake. Angler opposite was catching some fish. He'd obviously got a good margin peg as well. He was end peg on the opposite bank, but still not loads of fish. Big qualifiers, when the pegging is a little bit tighter than usual, they're a different animal altogether. Fish generally group up in little areas. You have to fish them slightly different. Now, I used to fish a lot of qualifiers 5 or 6 years ago, not so many now. In the actual fact, this was probably my first big money qualifier for maybe 5 years. And it was lucky that I've obviously drew a good peg, but I sometimes feel that fishing a venue all the time or fishing smaller matches, it can sometimes impede you a little bit on these big qualifiers, because they are a different type of match. They fish differently to a local match, a smaller match. The pegging's different, the pressure on the water's different. You just need to get a feel for how that's going to affect your day. Quite often, the weights are lower as well. So again, get a feel for that, get an idea of how the day's fishing, sort of ease yourself into the day and try and get your timings right. Try and keep things nice and simple, get your timings right. If you're on a good peg, you won't be far away, I'll tell you that for sure. Now, we had a great run on the feeder. It wasn't going to get me over the line, the feeder. You could just tell. It was great for middle of the match. We had another quick spell fishing on the short pole, that 5-6 metre line, and this time throwing 6mm pellets in. Three or four more fish on there, but I knew that if I was to catch any big weight, it needed to be done in that margin, and I needed to make that margin work. So I'd got 2 baits for the margin. I'd got softened 4mm and I'd got micros. Obviously, fishery micros, fishery 4mm. I literally poured some 4mm into a bucket, whizzed them around with a bit of water just before the start, just to take the edge off them. Sometimes they can hang in the surface film when you're potting them in and not throwing them. And also I wanted them to be a little bit denser, I wanted them to sit on the bottom a little bit heavier. And also I feel like a softened pellet is a little bit more attractive than a hard pellet when you're fishing baits over the top like corn, as I was on this particular day. So I started off feeding that margin 13 metres down my bank with softened 4mm, big pot in them, half a pot, just because you're big potting doesn't need to be filling the pot full, half a pot of softened 4mm, a few grains of corn in there. That was going to be my hook bait. I've done that 2 or 3 times, obviously just to get a bit of a rhythm going for those fish down the edge, and it's time to have a go in the margin.
We have just had another amazing day on the bank doing some incredible underwater filming. We've looked at how carp and F1s behave in a fishing situation, catching them right in front of the camera for you to see how these fish feed and react to our rigs underwater. To be honest, it's blown our mind, and it will no doubt catch you a load more fish. If you want to watch this incredible footage, you've got 2 options. You can either go to our website, www.anglingedge.co.uk. You can join on there. There's loads of benefits for being a member of the website. You can go through and watch all the back catalogue of underwater and our most recent film. Or if you prefer, go to the homepage of The Edge on YouTube and you can join us and be a member within YouTube and watch via YouTube. So however you prefer to watch, website or YouTube, it's there for you. But more importantly, so is the underwater footage. You've got to watch it. It's quite frankly incredible.
First drop in my margin, I was a little bit unsure of what was going to happen because I've not seen any signs of fish down there, not seen any bow waves out of the swim, nothing. Now the margin was a little bit deeper than I probably would have liked, but I think for bigger fish, and on the day it was probably the right depth, if I'm honest, because the fish wanted to be a little bit deeper. And I dropped my bait in, it sat there, and it sat there. No line bites, nothing, and I thought there's nothing down there. And then all of a sudden, after 2 minutes, the best bite you've ever seen, beautiful, zoom, whooshing under, lift up, and I'm attached to an 8-pounder. First fish with a brilliant run in the edge. So this is the rig that I use down the edge. Again, same elastic, 17 hollow, same mainline, 020, the same float, but this time in a 4x12. Now because there's extra buoyancy in the tip, it says 4x12 on it, but it's actually a little bit heavier, so you can add a little bit more weight, probably an extra number 9 on that, because the buoyancy in the tip helps you with that. Depth, 2 foot deep in the margin, 2.5. I've got this rig out, and it's probably, yeah, it was 2 foot deep, 2'6" maybe at most. I need to start putting lines on my top kits, don't I? So we can know exactly how deep it was. But it was 2'6" at most, probably 2 foot. I'd have loved 18 inches, but 2 foot it was. I've got little bulk just above my little 8-inch hook length, and then on my hook length I've got my sort of floating number 9 that is going up and down, and I just move that around depending on what's happening on the day. It's a personal thing. A 6-inch hook length would be great, but I like this sort of floating number 9. If I'm getting loads and loads of bites, I'll move that down. If I'm sitting there for a long time and there's not much action in the swim, I'll probably move it a bit further up. The hook length's 018. I've got a size 12 hook, that's a Kaizen, it's tied a knotless knot. Knotless knot, obviously, mega strong hook, mega strong way of tying your hook. And hook bait, double corn, fantastic hook bait. It was a bit of a last minute thing for me, this match was. I got a ticket literally the day before, and I think if I had a little bit more time to prepare, I'd have got myself down the tackle shop and I'd have got a few dead maggots as well. But we had corn, and whatever pellets we bought from the on-site shop. Nolly in the shop put us right with what bait to use, so thank you very much, Nolly. So we had corn and we had pellets. Fantastic margin baits, fantastic baits for big fish. The key for this margin swim was to feed after each fish. We've talked about feeding that short line, making sure your rig's out of the water when you feed. Very similar to how I want to feed this margin. I didn't want a kinder pot. I feel that kinder pot forces you to enter your rig into the swim a little bit too quickly. You sort of pot your bait in and you're in a rush to get your rig into the swim. Remember, that bait's not on the bottom yet. You need to get that loose feed on the bottom, because that's where you're going to present your hook bait. You don't want it falling through the water. So using the big pot, sometimes quarter filling it, sometimes half filling it, depending on how the session's going. Feeding that bait in the edge, shipping back, baiting the hook. By the time all that's happened, that bait is on the bottom, it's sitting exactly where you want it. You can then present your hook bait right over that loose feed really nicely. I feel that's a great way of fishing. It's hard work, but it's a great way of catching big fish especially. As we've gone on, we've had a great run up until the last 15 minutes, where you get a feel for how the session's going, and I felt that if I could maybe catch 3 more fish in this last 15 minutes, I feel like I could be dangerous in this match. And as it was, I didn't catch 3 fish, I caught 2 fish. Sadly though, one of them was a pound skimmer and one of them was an 8-ounce carp. So not the end that we needed. We needed a better finish than that.
What a lovely day it is now. Just waiting for the scales to come round. I think I've got maximum 145 pound. But I'm saying my guess is going to be sort of like 125, 130. I'm hoping I've underestimated with that, because on the other lake there's 3 people with a similar weight. Had a tricky last 15 minutes down that edge. Bumped a couple of fish. I was hoping to catch 2 or 3 more big ones and end up catching 1 skimmer, which is not ideal. So we're going to wait for the scales and see what happens.
Well done, mate.
154. That was my total weight. Not a clue what anyone else has had. We're just driving back now to the clubhouse and we're going to see what the other weights were. I've heard that there's 2, maybe 3 other people on the other lake that have caught really well. So hopefully they haven't caught as well as we thought, but we will see. Hopefully we've just got over the line, but I don't hold out any hope.
With 138 pounds, 13 ounces, Harry Bignell. Which leads us to our winner on the day. Qualifier number 11 is a former winner a match this. We don't see him very often, but when he comes, he tends to win. With a weight of £154, 1 ounce, from Island 71, collecting 190 quid, Rob Wotton. There we go, guys. Thank you very much. Have a safe journey home. Thank you for your continued
So there we go, folks. In to my second Maven Match This final. Now, hopefully you can remember as far back as 2017, one of the luckiest days I've had in my life. I managed to win the Maven Match This final. It was worth £70,000 back then, so a great match to win, fantastic match to win. Me and Lee actually went to Ireland that night as well, and we did really well in the World Pairs the following week. So it was a bit of a rush job. We had a fantastic whirlwind 8 or 9 days, let me tell you. Hopefully we can repeat it this year. We'll need to draw a good peg because, as always, and I keep saying it, the standard of angler that fish these matches and that qualify for these finals is phenomenal. There is some amazing anglers out there now. They catch loads of fish. The draw is so important. You need to draw well. I drew well on this qualifier. Hopefully I can draw well on the final, and hopefully we get ourselves over the line. Now guys, remember, if you want all the in-depth stuff, all the little intricacies about the feeding, if you want real life sessions of how to fish a margin, how to fish that short pellet line, how to fish a feeder, you name it, there's a tactic and a venue covered if you were to hit the join button at the top of our YouTube homepage. Hit that join button, you'll get access to all of our library of videos. Lee and myself go through everything in fine detail. There's something there for everyone, trust me. It'll improve your fishing massively, because when I go out with Lee, it improves my fishing. And I think Lee will say the same. When he goes out and sits with me, it improves his fishing. Come on the journey with us. You'll learn loads. We'll all catch loads of fish together, and hopefully you too can be in a big money final from what you've learned from our YouTube channel. That's the hope. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time.